people have experienced this. 8 people are not crazy.
This thing in your house is a demon.
So I love the Conjuring movies, and the reason that's kind of a big deal for me is because other than the found footage style genre, I'm not really too big into ghost or haunting movies. Not that I don't like them at all. There's plenty that I do like, but I tend to be more gravitated towards slashers, monster movies, psychological horror, zombies, other kinds of stuff in the horror bracket. And then the ghost paranormal stuff is usually down there somewhere with some outliers that I really, really love. And that really is most of the Conjuring movies. Not so much the offshoots or spin-offs, the Annabelles and the Nuns, but like the straight up Conjuring franchise as far as the Ed and Lorraine story with Conjuring 1, 2, 3, and now 4. I love all of them. I would say, obviously, the first 2 are the best. The second one is actually my favorite in the franchise, and I think that's one of those rare instances where a sequel is better than the original. A lot of people didn't like the third, and it is definitely the weakest, but I still enjoyed it a lot. And now with Conjuring The Last Rites, they're promoting this as being the final Conjuring movie, or at least the final movie of the Ed and Lorraine story. And so obviously I was excited to watch this, and I was actually totally wrong and confused because for some reason in my mind, I thought that James Wan was coming back to direct this one, but he doesn't. It's Michael Chavez, the same guy that directed Conjuring 3. At least in my opinion, I think this is a massive improvement over the third movie. I'm not quite sure how I would rank them all right now because it has been a while since I've watched the first one, but I think I would go 2, 1, 4, 3. But I have to double check. I have to rewatch the first one because I really, really like this one. However, I can understand why some people wouldn't, and I'll try to get into what I mean without spoilers, and then I'll talk a little spoiler stuff at the end. So basically, yes, we are returning with Ed and Lorraine Warren, Patrick Wilson, and Vera Farmiga. And the thing that draws me to these movies, and I think the reason I love them a lot more than any other kind of ghost and supernatural movie, is because I really do love these characters. I know they're loosely based on real people, but, outside of the real life aspects of any of the Conjuring movies, I don't care about that so much as I care about the characters in the film. And the characters that I've been watching over the course of the last decade plus of these movies, I love their relationship. I love their dynamic together. I love how they're completely supportive and they have each other's backs and they really do genuinely care for each other and for other people that they try to help as well. And I love that the Conjuring movies have never tried to spring up any drama about them fighting each other or being at each other's throats or having some kind of like relationship drama that you see in everything else. No, they really are a compelling and strong couple that are better together, stronger together, and they bring out the best in each other. And I think that's the thing that really draws me to these movies. It really is one of the strongest draws of these movies to me, and this one was no different. And this one involves their daughter, who is all grown up now, and she's going to be engaged very soon to somebody that she's dating. And so it's that sort of feeling of, watching your child kind of grow up and what that means to you. And with this also being promoted as the last film, and we've seen this in horror so many times. How many times has there been the final chapter or the final installment and it's not the final at all, or something ends and it's not going to be the end. But I think with that in mind, that was the intent that they were going for, I think a lot of the tension was ramped up for me because I don't pay attention to like the real life story of, these people that the characters are based on. So for me, it kind of felt like anybody was up for grabs, like whether it was Ed or Lorraine or their daughter, it felt like at any point in time, maybe this was going to be the movie that was going to take one of them out. And we're dealing with Ed and Lorraine that are basically retired from doing their paranormal investigations. There might be some medical complications going on, and so they're just kind of living out their lives and not trying to get involved. Of course, it's a standard trope of like, I'm done with that, I'm not getting involved anymore, and then they get pulled in to another case, of which they do. And I thought this one was pretty interesting. It's not as good as the first 2 Conjuring cases. And that's sort of the thing about this movie, is it is very cliche for the ghost haunting paranormal genre. Like, This is a movie that has a lot of slow moments that build up to jump scares. This is a this is a movie with a haunted mirror. This is a movie where characters are going to hear voices in the distance, or, go into places that they shouldn't go into. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. So I think when it comes to this film, like, you're not necessarily going to get anything brand new that you haven't seen in the other Conjuring movies. And that's where the movie could be disappointing to people, because I have seen some people say that they didn't really like it, or they thought it was just okay. And in that aspect, I kind of understand, because it does just kind of go through the motions of what you would expect a Conjuring movie to do. But on the flip side of that, it does it so well that if you like the Conjuring movies, it's kind of like a greatest hits. It kind of gives you the best of what you like about the Conjuring movies, and in a completely honest, like, earnest way. Like, it doesn't try to deviate in a way that maybe is, trying to bring in this final installment of the Conjuring series in a way that everybody that is a fan of these movies is going to enjoy. So it doesn't necessarily give you anything brand new or exciting. But if you like the Conjuring movies, this is a Conjuring movie through and through. So that can be a positive or negative depending on how you want to look at it. But I really did like the haunted entity here, and I like how the family that gets it, is quite the extended family. There's a lot of people living in this house. My only negative with that is once the Warrens come into the picture, the family does kind of fall to the background. So you spend a lot of time in the first half of the movie introducing and getting to know all these characters and the siblings and the parents. And then by the end of the film, they're just sort of there, which I guess would be what would happen when you call in paranormal investigators, like, hey, you guys do your thing, we're going to be over here. But they're not as involved. There's a little bit of involvement in them in the final act, but mostly, like, once the Warrens come in, they're just kind of there. So you do spend a lot of time with characters that eventually kind of fall to the wayside. But I did like all the scares. Like, I can't lie. Like, there's simple shit going on, but sometimes the simple stuff is the best, where a woman is talking on the phone, and it takes place in the 1980s, so the phone's on a cord attached to the wall, and it shows earlier the kids pulling on the cord to kind of tease her, like, stop doing that. And then, of course, later on, the phone cord is being pulled, and the kids are in the other room, so it's something else doing it. There's the typical shot of somebody in the basement, and you can see a figure standing in the distance, and she turns on the light, and it disappears. There's jump scares. There's a little baby doll crawling around that you saw in the trailers, like, screaming, "Mommy, Mommy," and you hear that sound coming from different rooms. I did like the intensity of the final act. It takes place during a storm, and, like, all the cliches are happening, but they're all working. And again, I'm going to keep coming back to that. The movie it's standard for a haunting movie, but everything is done well. Everything about it is done great. So it's like, it is cliche, but it kind of feels like it's not, just because it's working so well, and it's working with characters that I love. And I think that's the factor that means the most, is like, do you care about the characters in this situation? And I really love the Warrens. I love Ed and Lorraine. And I really did enjoy the dynamic between their daughter and her fiance as well. He has a really good arc in the film that I won't go into and won't spoil, but he's more than meets the eye. He's not just like a throwaway or like a jerk character. Like, he actually has a lot to do, which is good. And the ending scene, which I'm not going to spoil right now, but it does, there are a lot of emotional moments too. But again, it's emotional moments depending on how much you care about Ed and Lorraine. So if you are a fan of the Conjuring movies and you love them as characters, I think this is going to be a very satisfying entry and a satisfying conclusion, but it doesn't try to top some of the others that, were kind of the pinnacle of the series thus far. I do have one negative that tends to be my negative of so many movies that have come out in the last 10 years. This is not specific to this film. It's just something that I see over and over, and I've talked about it in many reviews, and that's that I don't know why we forgot how to shoot scenes in the dark. If you go back to a movie in, like, the 1980s or even the 70s, there are scenes that take place outdoors in the middle of the woods at night, but you can see everything that's going on. It is lit in a way where it's not frustrating to try to make out what you're seeing. I don't know why there's this trend in recent times, in like the last decade or so, where every scene that's shot at night has to be so goddamn dark that you can barely make out which character you're looking at. It's been one of my pet peeves and one of my gripes for movies for many, many years now. And unfortunately, this movie was no different. It does have some scenes that take place at night where I do have bad vision, admittedly, but like, come on now, where I am squinting so hard at the screen to try to make out what's going on. And to me, that's not scary. I think there are useful, advantageous ways to use darkness. And I think that one of them that did work was that basement shot I was talking about, where someone's standing in the distance, because that requires a moment where you're meant to see what's in the distance. You know, you're meant to see there's somebody standing there, so it has to be lit a little bit better so you can see that. I don't know why we don't just do that. Like, why we can't just see things if it's all pitch black, completely dark. It just becomes more frustrating than anything else. Another thing is the length of the movie. This is like 2.5 hours, which I give it the benefit of the doubt for being the final entry in the series. Like, it needs a little bit more time. But after watching it, I do think there are some things you could cut out. You could probably tighten it up and maybe make it like 15 minutes shorter. But those are my only two real gripes. Just the darkness of the film, and maybe it's a little bit too long, but not too bad. So anyways, I'd recommend it if you're a Conjuring fan, or if you just want to see a good spooky haunted house movie. It's getting to be spooky season, September, October, so it's probably a good one to go out and see. So now I'm going to talk about spoilers a little bit, just a couple specific things that I really liked in the movie. So if you care about spoilers, this is your warning now. If you haven't seen it, just go ahead and give the video a thumbs up, a like, a comment. I'd really, really appreciate it. Thank you, guys. But for spoilers, I will say this. One thing that I really, really loved was the opening scene and how impactful that was for the rest of the movie, because it deals with Ed and Lorraine going to the house where they first experienced the haunted mirror. And Lorraine is pregnant at the time, and she starts to go into labor. So they have to run her to the hospital, and she almost loses her daughter. So the daughter comes out stillborn and is basically dead for like a full minute before they're able to resuscitate it. So, this is a very emotional scene. And I think the movie really does deal with this like full circle aspect of life, like life and death, obviously. So, they had to process the death of their daughter for like a minute, and then they got her back. And so that shows how much they care about her later on, and the difficulty Ed has with accepting somebody proposing to her, and also, how much they're desperately trying to help her throughout the ending of the film, because she is the one that actually goes to the house. Ed and Lorraine don't accept the case until their daughter goes there, and they realize this full circle thing is happening, and she goes there without even knowing it was the mirror, without even knowing it has any connection and stuff. So I like that emotional thread line throughout the entire film, and I think that when you're dealing with these aspects of like, birth and marriage and old age, and it's like all these kind of defining life moments, and I think that worked really, really well for me. Anyways, I really like the mirror itself. It did a lot of cool things, like they notice something odd is happening, spirits come out of it, like there's the creepy old lady you see in the trailer, and there's also a dude with an axe that looks like the freaking the guy from the Sinister movies. It's not him, but it looks very similar, just a big jack dude with carrying around an axe. And there's a great moment where they try to get rid of the mirror, and they throw it out in the garbage, and it gets crushed by the garbage truck. And as it's crushed and all the glass shards are breaking apart, somebody inside the house, one of the family members, starts like gagging and like coughing up shards of glass. So like little haunting things like that work really well for me. Obviously, whenever the creepy old lady shows up, I mean, that shit just reminds me of The Shining, and it gets under my skin anyways. But I really like the story of the fiance of the daughter, because he's a young dude, but he already retired from being a police officer, because he was in a situation where he was going to get shot and the gun clicked, but it was a misfire. So he literally almost died in that situation. And it kind of made him reflect and gather to himself what he values. And, that's the reason why he wants to propose to her so early on in their relationship, because he's just like, feeling like how precious life is, right? Like that it could end at any time. So him being actually a genuinely good dude and not falling into the cliche of being like the douchebag guy, and even though him and Ed don't necessarily get along in the first half of the film, it's not like they straight up hate each other. It's not like Ed's not trying to go out of his way to be mean to the guy. He's just nervous about, his daughter going off with another man, going to somebody else. So like, it's that protector vibe, that he had an issue with. It's not so much that they butt heads as people. So I appreciated that. And the ending does deal with the wedding, and it deals with Lorraine sort of having a vision about their future. And it's a very romanticized, emotional kind of montage of where they're going to end up and what they're going to do and all this kind of stuff. And it does feel like a little tacked on. Like if that scene wasn't there wouldn't really be a lot in this movie to say that it's the final installment, because they do all make it out, in the end. But the final segment, again, was so good that it's done so well that you just kind of accept it. Yeah, it just kind of works. So personally, I really love this movie. I had a really good time with it. A lot of it worked for me. I have a couple of little gripes and nitpicks, but nothing that ruined the experience of the movie in its entirety for me. I had a lot of fun with it. I had a good time seeing these characters again. And I do kind of hope it's the last movie, end on a high note sort of thing. We'll see what happens, because apparently it's making a lot of money at the box office, especially for its budget. So sometimes people say this is the last movie and then it makes a shit ton of money and they're like, just kidding. So we'll see what happens, but I kind of hope it's the last one. I'm good with a solid 4-movie run. That works for me. I'm satisfied. So let me know what you guys think down below. Leave all your thoughts, theories, opinions about Conjuring 4, Conjuring Last Rites. Let me know what you thought about it, and how would you rank the Conjuring movies? For me, I'm going to have to go back and rewatch the first one again, and even the third one. It's been a while, but number 2 is still top spot, and then I think I'd go 1, 4, 3, but I don't know. I'll have to think about it. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. I'll talk to you next time.